Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my two illustrious co-hosts, Patricia Kirkman, PK, a very famous numerologist, and our resident, very famous psychic medium, George Lugo. Hi, guys. How's everything?
Hey there. Great.
Doing great
Looking
today,
forward.
honey. Doing great.
Yeah, we've got one heck of a show. Tonight we have John Edmonds and Bruce Macdonald. They are co-authors of the new book, Stardust Ranch, The True Story. We're going to hear things. Now, we've had John on the show before. I know you guys remember. Great show. We learned so much about what John and his wife Joyce have been through at the ranch. And now they've come out with this great book. We are telling everybody to go out and buy it. You can get it on Amazon, and it's going to give you details that we didn't even hear on our live shows, but we're going to delve into all of this tonight with both John and Bruce, and please feel free to call in with your questions. Our number is 563-999-3539. Again, that's 563-999-3539. But first, PK, we got to talk to you because there's so much stuff flying in the universe, and you've been following the numerology on this whole royal debacle. So catch
That
us
is an
up
understatement.
Is it an understatement? Okay.
See,
Catch us up on what's
I'll
going on.
just start our conversation off with, her father says that she is turning the royal family into a Walmart with crown on top.
Ugh.
Pretty sad. Pretty sad.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, that's terrible.
So I took a look at what's going on with them at this point. We talked about them last week, but I think this will kind of wrap up what we've had to say about her until she makes another stupid, shall we say, another stupid event that she'll put out to the rest of us, like wanting to sue the papers for taking pictures of her and the baby and the dogs walking, saying that they've jumped out of the bushes. No, they didn't. If you watch it, they're watching her, they're stepping in front of her. She's posing for them, but yet they're, quote, harassing her. So I don't know. Anyway, make a long story short, we're just taking a quick look here I looked at the birth names of Meghan and Harry and taking a look at the baby situation here. Right now, Meghan is in the 7 personal year, so for her, it deals with legal issues, and boy, she's going to be hitting those for sure. Harry's in a 1 year, it's all about fresh starts and new beginnings. But at the point in time that they got together to get married, Harry was in a 9 year. Nothing started in a 9 ever lasts. It always has major issues with it. So that's part of it. She was in a 6, so she had pretty much control of what was going on. And for her, in her chart, that's a karmic issue to begin with. But little Archie, he's born into a 5 year, major changes going on right from the get-go, and he's in a 6 year, so issues within the family is going to be his major problem. And it will be a problem for him because it's going to involve his digestive and how things are going. It's going to affect him in many ways. It'll start firstly with the digestive, as I said.
Wow, so it's going to affect his health.
Yeah, and in his chart, his major problem parent-wise is going to be the mother figure. Gee, is that a surprise? So, right off the bat, our poor little guy's got a lot of issues he's going to have to work with. But the end result is Harry and Meghan, I'll give them maybe 5 years.
Oh, you're generous.
Just well,
some people are saying 1 year.
It may stay together for 5 years, but there are too many things going on right now. If you take a look, anytime that there's a camera around, she's posing.
Yeah.
Nothing is just offhand. There's no real pictures
Candid.
that are just. Yeah, thank you, George. No candid pictures. She's posed in everything. Harry's candid because he's just kind of like, I hate to put it this way, Harry has become the dog in the backseat. He just kind of rides along with whatever's necessary and whatever he has to do, but it's on her choices and what she wants. So she set things up that when this is all over, I keep thinking of the Duchess and Duke of Windsor way back, and it's kind of like an instant replay. Be careful what you wish for, you might get it.
Don't you think when that happened way back then, there was some honesty to it? It just seemed like, yeah, I guess that should have happened the way it did. But there's something about this that just feels so off. And
because it is.
Because
artificial.
it is.
I think
you're right.
that, firstly, she goes by Megan, and that's her middle name. That's her emotional side talking. Her real name is Rachel. She doesn't go by that. And using the name Rachel, because of the way it's set up, there again, it's me, my, and I. That's how her chart comes up, me, my, and I. She's very detailed about the money's very important to her. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this does play out. Like I said, there's too many sleight of hands that we're going to see. They've already got some deals in the works. They had them already set up before they ever left. But these are coming on her part. Even her best friends have started backing away. And it's going to be interesting to see how it ends up faring in the long run. But it's not going to be a pretty picture, I don't think. But that's just my opinion from what I see. Because there's legal things going on around her all year long. This does not end until around October, and that at that point in time, it's going to start. There's going to be things that will affect her finances and what's going on there. Harry, poor soul, he thinks he's in charge. Boy, has he got a surprise coming. It's not going to happen.
I don't think he's figured that out yet. That's really too bad.
Nope.
I don't wish anything bad on any of them. I know none of us do.
No, I don't either. But it was more about greed as opposed to need. And I think that's what's happened where she's concerned. And same thing with her first husband. If someone's no longer of use, oh well. And if you can turn your back on your own family, her mother left when she was a youngster. And at 11 years old, the father was the one that ended up taking care of everything and raising her, sending her off to school, getting her college degrees and such as this, which is wonderful. Now, Mama's back in the picture, and Daddy has nothing to be seen. Kind of strange.
Yeah. Very, very, there's a lot of rejection patterns going on in that family, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you honestly, I was quite surprised at all the negative comments I was reading online about Meghan, about the way she acts, how she comes across. She hasn't warmed the hearts of anybody. And you think of Princess Diana, she was so loved. She was revered in so many ways and so honored for who she was as a person. It's just a direct opposite, unfortunately.
Well, I think Harry thought he was getting a clone of his mother, even more of a shock for him when reality really sets in.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
well,
and
you haven't been wrong yet, PK. You have not been wrong yet, and all of your predictions from the last several years, you've been right on the money. So I'm gonna put a bet on you on what you have to say about how long this is going to last, because it's clear, like you said, anything in the 9 years is going to come to an end.
Like I said,
yeah.
I feel sorry for him because he's given up his entire world, and he's going to have to be there for that young son of theirs because she'll use the boy. It will be abused as time goes on because it's all about her first.
Oh, boy. Not a good way to be a mom. Well, we'll see what happens, but like I said, you haven't been wrong yet, not once. So appreciate all of your insight on this. Really do.
We'll just pray that nice things can happen for the youngster.
Maybe everybody's eyes will be opened in a good way. We'll see what happens next. So in the meantime, everybody, if you need and you would like your own personal numerology reading, be sure to reach out to PK. You can find her at patriciakirkman.com, and you can also find her on supernaturalgirls.com. And if you want your own psychic mediumship reading with our best in the world psychic medium, George Lugo, you can find George at crystalgatereadings.com. Again, that's crystalgatereadings.com. Also on Supernatural Girls, we have on our website our famous and powerful candles on sale. Also, soul realignment readings, dream analysis. Reach out to me on the site, and we'll set something up for you. And again, go to our Facebook page, please. We have so many great stories that we posted this week. So follow us. You'll be able to keep up with everything that we're putting out on Facebook. Lots of UFO pictures and great pictures from the Stardust Ranch also. That's on Facebook and Twitter. So be sure to follow us there as well so you can keep up with all of what we're doing. Like I said, we're taking you down the rabbit hole every single week. And so tonight, this is so exciting to have this subject back, and John back with us again, because John is such a great guest, and he's told us so much about his adventures with this, good and bad. And now he's back tonight with Bruce Macdonald. Now, just a little background. When John and his wife, Joyce Edmonds, found the Stardust Ranch in the Buckeye area of Arizona, they thought they found their dream home. Now, Joyce wasn't so hot on it, and I'm sure we're going to hear about that. But John was in love with it. He was getting a good price, and so they got the ranch. But they got the surprise of their lives with it when UFOs began turning up in the skies above the ranch, and aliens started showing up in their home. Doesn't stop there. They've had experiences with men in black, grays, samurai swords are a big part of this. And tonight we are so, so honored to have with us John Edmonds and his co-author, Bruce Macdonald. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well,
it's great to be back.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad you made it, Bruce, all the way from Costa Rica.
I have a Skype subscription. I needed to do my work. I still work in software and telecommunications remotely, so it was really no inconvenience.
Terrific.
Wonderful.
Well,
for us.
Very happy to have you with us. So much to get into tonight. I'm going to stop talking and just ask you, John, to give us a little bit of background. I know our audience is pretty well versed in your story, but if you could catch up the rest of the people that may not have heard how you found the ranch, and then, of course, don't leave out the swimming pool story, because that still is a big mystery. It's never been solved. So take it away.
That's the truth.
Well, thank you. Essentially, Joyce and I had been looking around all over the country for a ranch that we could afford, or a farm that we could afford that we could have horses. And, we wanted a nice house. We wanted a few amenities. We wanted some land, but it had to be near a city where we could both work, because, we had a little bit of money, but not a lot. And, we had to replace it by having employment. So, we traveled when we could, and we went all over, and we just really couldn't find anything that met the criteria. And then, lo and behold, we got a call from a realtor, and he said, hey, I think I might have found the place for you. And I said, well, where is it? And he says, it's in Rainbow Valley, Arizona. And I said, well, you know what? I'm from Chicago. I never heard of Rainbow Valley, Arizona. Where's that? And he said, well, it's an area that's unincorporated. It's about 35 to 38 miles southwest of Phoenix, and it's kind of close to Buckeye. And I said, okay, well, let's go out and take a look at it. We went out and looked at it. He didn't even go with us. He literally just gave us the address, and Joyce and I drove out there and looked at it. And from the very moment I saw it, I said to myself, you know what, this might work. 10 acres, beautiful landscaping in terms of the natural beauty of the mountains. And I thought, wow, it's a great price. Why not? And Joyce looked at me and she goes, not so fast. And I said, well, what's wrong with it? And she says, feel the energy. And I said, what's the feel? It feels like a good deal. And, as far as I was concerned, I think I was here about 10 minutes. And I said, yeah, this is, for me, it's a done deal. And she was horrified. The more she walked around and looked at it, the more she hated it. And, I try to be Mr. Logical and tie her down and say, okay, what is it you don't like about this? And she goes, well, it's a gazillion miles from Phoenix, and that means I'm going to have a long drive every day. And I said, well, yeah, but we've already looked at all the communities north of here. We've looked up at Flagstaff. We've looked all over the country. If you were planning to keep your job, this is so far the closest place to keeping your job that I can have horses and that we can live in the country. And, gradually I kind of broke her down with logic. And so she said yes. And reluctantly.
She must really love you, John.
Oh, she does.
That's a fact.
She does. And I've got to say, after all these years, I have a tremendous amount of guilt. And probably even more so after writing the book with Bruce, because, I realized just not only how much she has given up, but, just how severely it's affected her physically and every other way.
Wow.
So we bought the ranch. And we went to move in. And the next thing you know, when we drove up in our rental truck from Glendale, where we had been living, the people that actually we bought it from hadn't moved out, even though they'd had plenty of time and they set the date and the whole works. They didn't move out. And so we were absolutely horrified because here we are, we're basically homeless. We can't move into the new ranch, and we have a truck full of all our stuff. And I've got, a pair of Rottweilers with me that are absolutely fit to be tied, literally. And, it just wasn't a good situation. And I called the realtor and I said, what gives? I paid cash for this place. It's a done deal. I mean, it's our house. Why are these people still here? And the realtor said, I don't have the foggiest idea. Let me get on the phone and get hold of them. So he eventually tracked somebody down, and they told him that they would go ahead and make arrangements. So he called me back and said, okay, can you, occupy yourselves for 12 hours while these people move? So we went out and had breakfast, had lunch, had dinner. We did everything we could think of, because we had the dogs. It's not like you could just lock them in the car. And, we came back about 8 o'clock that night and did a walkthrough, and everything was out of the house. It had been cleaned up, and I thought, okay, good. This is much better. Tomorrow we'll move in. And then I thought, you know what, I should probably, just to make sure, I should go check on the pool, because I've lived in houses with pools before, and ultimately pools can be sometimes a lot more trouble than they're worth. And sure enough, this was one of those times. So I went to walk out, and I opened the doors in the back, and I walked out into the area where the pool was. And lo and behold, yes, the pool was running, the lights were on, the filter was on, but the pool was full of every single piece of furniture, every appliance, every box, you name it, it was all in the pool. These folks, or somebody working for them or associated with them, didn't move them at all. They just moved everything into the pool.
And there was water in the pool, and they just threw it in the water?
You betcha. You betcha.
Right.
This was a 9-foot deep diving pool, and everything was stacked in the water all the way to the bottom and about 6 feet above it.
That is so strange.
Yep, and I called the realtor, and I said, what gives? Everything is out of the house, and now it's all in the pool. And he just paused for a second, and he said, well, you wanted them out. And I'm like, yeah, but off the property, not in the pool. That's not moving. And he said, well, it's yours now. Good luck.
Good Lord.
Wow.
And that was it.
Awful.
I spent like the next week dragging everything out of the pool, and I had to go and get a winch to pull the appliances out and drag them out and put them out front. So
now, in the book, you guys, you and Bruce talked about the fact that he never did get a hold of the owners. And so,
well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that he actually talked to the owners, but he did talk to somebody. Okay. So, it's one of those things. I mean, for all I know, he never talked to anybody. He might have just turned around and paid a couple of goons to go do what he did. I have no idea, because after that, we didn't have much more contact.
That's a very
Incredible.
strange way to start it off in your new home. Oh my God!
Well, and it just kind of went downhill from there. I mean, soon after that, we started seeing things. We started having experiences with a particular individual that has sort of ethically become known as the Machete Man, who apparently lived in a shack on the back of the first 5 acres of the property, and we didn't know about him. He just all of a sudden showed up and told me that he lived here. And I was like, what do you mean you live here? I live here. I just bought this place. And he goes, well, I live in the back there, and I kill the monsters. And as soon as he said that, I just said to myself, oh, God, here we go. And, it was just one thing after another. I told him I don't need anybody to kill the monsters. And he ended up leaving. But on his way out, he turned around and looked at me, and he said, you know what, you're going to be really sorry.
Oof.
And I thought to myself, well, that's a threat. But, in retrospect, I kind of wish he'd hung out, because, in fact, we did have monsters. I didn't know at the time, but in turn, we really did have monsters.
You did, and you still do. So
yeah,
let
we
me
still
ask,
do.
let me ask you, Bruce, have you been to the ranch?
No,
So
and I don't think I'll be going anytime soon.
Wonder why.
Why not?
Well, I got a pretty good sense of it, writing the book. John and I tried to write the book in 2012. I quit halfway through, and I just found it the whole thing a bit disturbing. And it just sort of sat in my unconscious, and then we got back together in 2019, and I finished it. But, everybody asks me the same question, do you want to go out there? And my answer is, no, not really. I think some people can benefit from it. There's a very positive energy there. When you get into the later part of the book, when John had the cleaning in 2011 with a woman in the Arizona area who came out with a couple other associates. She told me when I interviewed her for the book that there is a very, very positive energy at the ranch as well, and that in fact may be attracting the negative entities. It's a kind of I guess associated with the portals, but simple answer is I might go someday. My son wants to go. He's 22, and maybe we'll go out, John. Maybe we'll go out for 3 days and see what it's like. If you get the swimming pool cleaned out, I don't like really hot weather without a swimming pool.
Well, it's good to have your priorities, Bruce. So,
John, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, John. This is George.
Hi, George.
Question is, you've been there quite a while now, and this thing has been just kind of expanding and all of this. Now, the aliens that are there that come to visit, does it seem like there's more of them now because they know who you are and they, I guess, feel at home there and they just kind of show up more, or is it about the same?
Well, George, I would tell you this, and that is we've had documented by somebody that was here that actually was keeping track. At one time we had 152 grays or 155, I don't remember which, on the property that he documented. And so, yeah, I would say there's probably a lot more of them at certain times than other times, but we have no clue why. Unfortunately, with this whole thing, we're still observing, and there's really no trends. I mean, there's very few things that we can say, well, when this happens, then within a certain amount of time, something else is going to happen. It's a very free flow situation. We have had more different types of aliens showing up. I mean, we've had mantis beings show up, and now, as of this last May, we started having a completely different species of ET show up that I have no name for. I don't even know what it is. It's a very unusual in the literature. I've never seen anything like it. I've showed it to a few people. Nobody's ever seen one of these before. So I don't know if Patricia put it up on her website or
I
put it up someplace where people could see it.
Yeah, it's on the Facebook page, and I sent them the photographs from Bruce to both of you guys, both PK and George. So you have them to take a look at. And is this the one that you're referring to, John? Is this the rainbow-colored one?
Yes. Yeah, it's a very, and I'll tell you what, when it showed up, I mean, literally I was sitting on a sofa in my area where I have my computers and a big long table set up, and all of a sudden it appeared right in front of me, and it was 3D, and I could hear a friend of mine telling me, John, you can't just see these things, you can't do what you've done before, which is just sit there and stare at stuff. You actually got to get some pictures. And so I picked up my phone and I set it on photo and I started taking pictures. And the interesting thing was it didn't care. It let me take those pictures. It didn't pose any kind of threat to me. It didn't communicate with me in any way, shape, or form. It just stood there. But it was very three-dimensional, and you can't tell that really from looking at that picture. You can actually see right through it.
Yeah, you can, but the thing that was so weird about those pictures, and you did take quite a few of them, which was a good idea, they have teeth.
Yes, you can see the jaw moving back and forth inside of its mouth.
And these
I know, it's the strangest thing. I know.
Yeah, it's like, what's up with these teeth?
That's what I said when I told you that I thought it was kind of scary looking.
Now I see why you said that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the colors are kind of disarming. I mean, pink, rainbow, blue, whatever. I mean, you don't think of those as being very threatening colors, but it was spectacular to see this thing because it didn't make any threatening moves. It didn't do anything that would cause me to go grab a sword and try to hurt it. I just sat there and I tried to send it good vibes, because, now that I've been around Facebook long enough, I've had, every person that ever wanted to see an alien tell me how I should behave when I'm around them. And so I've decided to take some of the hints and actually try to use them. And so, I tried to be very relaxed and I tried to be very, send it love. That's what I always hear. Send it light, send it love. Okay. So I made my best attempt at trying to do that. And lo and behold, it didn't try to run. It didn't try to hurt me. It didn't try to hurt an animal or anything else. It just stood there and looked at me. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not sending it love the right way. But that was the best I could do under the circumstances. And it seemed to be very cool with me. And it hung out for like 10 minutes. So,
that's a long time.
I thought to myself, yeah, that's a long time. And I shot a bunch of pictures. I shot some orbs, great big green orbs on the ceiling as well. I don't think I probably included those. But, I mean, it was an amazing experience, and you get to debut it right here on your show.
Yeah, the pictures are up on Facebook. There is one picture I posted for everybody to see. I'll be posting more tomorrow that Bruce was kind enough to send over, and it is a remarkable image. I have never seen an alien like that before. I've seen quite a few because we have so many guests that we interview, and we've been interviewing people for so many years about this, but I've never seen anything with rainbow colors. How about you, George and PK?
Nope, never have.
Just a surprise.
Yep.
What about you, George? Have you?
No, never seen anything like that, especially with teeth. I mean, I would think like, I'd feel like a Thanksgiving turkey if I wasn't too careful.
The teeth bother me.
Yeah, I mean, the teeth are something else. So I want to, again, suggest to everybody in our audience, when you have a chance, go to our Facebook page for Supernatural Girls. You will see the rainbow photo, the rainbow alien there, and you'll see the teeth. And we'd love to know what you think. But
wow.
Yeah, I know they were supposed to have like 57 different races of aliens on this planet, and I've seen a lot of different pictures, but never anything like that. So, John, you are the first to present that type of alien.
Well, I as long as they don't name it after me, we're good.
And what's so nice is you were calm about it. You sent love. It didn't hurt you. It didn't hurt any of your animals, which in the past that has happened. And it's been very concerning. Problem. Yeah,
yes,
because I know how much you love your animals, as we love ours, and you've had trouble with these aliens doing whatever they want to do with your animals, which is horrible.
Well, and the interesting thing also was the fact this was not a small ET. This thing was probably about 5 feet tall. Whereas the grays, we've seen a lot of small grays. We've seen a few that were about 5 feet tall. And on 2 or 3 occasions, we've seen some that were, 6 or 7 feet tall. So, this was it just took me by surprise completely. And it has been back a couple of times. And so when it came back, I asked it, I said, and I explained to it, I said, look, we don't really seem to be having a two-way conversation here, but that doesn't mean you can't necessarily understand what I'm thinking. So I'd like to ask you a favor. And that is, we've had a lot of problems here on the ranch with ETs that have been, destructive and hateful and have, killed or hurt animals and hurt us. I have no problem with you being here, welcome. But would you do me a favor and would you please round up the rest of them and run them off or do something to control them so that they quit making trouble around here? And no sooner than I said that, it disappeared. And within a very short period of time, a couple of days after that, the ranch was peaceful. For the first time since I've lived here, it was completely peaceful. And all the rest of it stopped. And it's been pretty quiet since.
That's really great. A couple of things. And, George, I want to get your input, and PK yours, too, because I know you guys are very sensitive to this energy. What I pick up with this particular alien is they're related to the plasma ships, which is a whole different, apparently, type of transportation. And I'm just feeling that very strongly. There is a way that they are in those ships, where those ships are alive, and they certainly can feel everything you're feeling, just like they feel everything the ship is feeling. It's a whole different way of communicating. So this one obviously heard you and responded. What do you think, George? What are you picking up?
Yeah, it sounds very organic, and you should have asked them if they can somehow heal any of your animals that are sick, or you or anyone, just asking if they can do that. That would be really something to see if they could. And I think it's all done through vibration, frequencies, that kind of thing. Do you ever hear any sound around them?
No, there was, in fact, the only other thing that I experienced was I could almost feel like my blood pressure going up. I sensed at the very end of my last time that I saw one of these things, I felt anxiety. And I never feel anxiety. I'm a very calm, kind of laid-back guy. And I could feel almost like an intensity, like my heart beating hard enough that I could feel it and hear it, like in my hearing. And it seemed to intensify the energy around me to the point where I was having a hard time focusing. So that part was, unpleasant, but it was, not to me life-threatening or necessarily even related. It might have just been a coincidence. I don't know.
So when that calmed down, did you feel better?
Yeah, actually, as soon as it left, I was exhausted, and I went and laid down and took a nap.
Energy. How is it affecting your wife?
Well, I mean, she's not here that much, so really none of this affects her. I mean, she's, she gets home real late at night, and she goes to bed. We spend a little time together, and then she goes to bed and gets up and goes back to work. So
it's not affecting her overall well-being?
Well, I think there's a long-term cumulative effect of living on the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's been the person that for the last few years has, been the good soldier and got up and went to work every day and did her job and then came home. Whereas, I've been concentrating on running the ranch and doing projects out of the ranch and contributing that way. So, I don't have the commute. And the commute is a real burden. Phoenix is now, 3 times the population it was when we moved in here, and so you're looking at anywhere from a 90-minute to a 2-hour commute.
Yeah, it's horrendous.
Way, huh?
Going through to California, I go, and it's terrible. But
yeah,
what I was
horrible.
wondering is, because of how things are overall around, is there any? I don't know why I'm using the word residue of what's been ongoing during the day while she's gone that affects her when she comes home? Or is it just as if she's walking into a clean slate, shall we say?
It's a good question. I don't know that she has enough insight about the situation to be able to tell me that.
Okay.
Usually it's get home, unwind for, 40 minutes, and then go to sleep and get up and do it again the next day. So we really don't have a lot of those kind of conversations. We've learned over the years to try to stay in the moment as much as possible, because when you try to do all the sweeping analysis and sweeping generalities and all that, all you do is you just make yourself miserable. It's better to just deal with things head on, moment by moment, and move on.
Well, and also, I think Joyce must have some pretty good mechanisms for protection in place, because you talk in the book about, you and Bruce wrote about the fact that she levitated while she was sleeping, but yet she didn't remember any of it, and it didn't bother her one bit. I mean, she went up pretty high in the air, didn't she?
She went about 4 feet off the bed, and then got literally carried through the house and literally out the carport and up into a ship. And, at the time, she had no awareness of it until afterwards when she fell, because I walked out there with a rifle and shot the area right where the light came out of, where it emanated from. And they dropped her. And I tried to break her fall, and we both ended up kind of getting plowed into the ground. And afterwards, she was horribly sick. I was horribly sick. We both had some kind of terrible exposure. She ended up getting this terrible disease called scleroderma. And I got real sick for about 4 or 5 days with the same thing. Skin started peeling off. All the skin.
The radiation?
Well, we went to 2 hospitals, and neither one of them would register the fact that we had exposure to radiation. But as soon as we got home from the second hospital, within about 2 hours, we started getting calls from the Center for Disease Control. Next thing we know, we had a specialist within about 2 days knocking on our front door.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's, it was a very strange thing. We were both really sick, but I got over it. I got over it in just a very short period of time, and really never had any further problems with it. The government guys came and, they requested to do blood and urine and interview us and lie detector tests and the whole works, and we did all that, and we passed with flying colors, and we've had to do it at least twice since then, and always the same thing. We believe you. We know you're telling the truth. We just want to keep track and see what happens with this.
Well, one of the reasons
what we've been doing.
we spoke about this off the air, John, that this is a very interesting situation with scleroderma, is that the troops are coming back with scleroderma, and also the troops that have been involved in saucer recovery and alien body recovery are coming back with scleroderma. And how I know this is there is a woman who was able to work with a doctor and get a great new medication from Europe that takes care of the intestinal symptoms of scleroderma, which are quite life-threatening. She was on the verge of having to have her entire colon removed because it was so scarred from scleroderma. Scleroderma makes you basically overproduce collagen, and it scars your exterior and your interior, and then eventually kills you because your organs can't function when they're so scarred. And they were going to just remove her colon, and her doctor was very proactive, found a medication in Europe, and she took it for 3 months and totally reversed the scarring. So she never had to take it again after that. So it was a miracle that this happened. But then she got a knock on her door from the DOD asking her to come and talk to them about scleroderma and the medication that she used. They also made her sign a non-disclosure, and she wouldn't say, she was unable to talk about why, but we know why. I mean, this is something that also ties in the UFO exposure.
That's right.
Well, it's really interesting that the troops in general are being exposed to this because, I can see retrieval teams that are going out to sites, where there's crashes because, the radiation or whatever energy is out there is going to be pretty much uncontrolled at that point. But you would think they'd wear suits. You'd think there would be protection. And if they're getting sick, even with protection, then that even brings up more questions because then what we're looking at is some kind of energy source that human technology doesn't have a way to deal with.
That's for sure. Or is it, and it also could be exposure to certain microbes that we don't have a way of managing in our own biological system, so it takes over and does something it shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of questions with this disease. It's very deadly. It has a lot of tentacles to it, and so it's a horrible thing. You're lucky you got over it, and unfortunately, Joyce did not.
They were fascinated by that because they were there right after we got sick. In the fact that they got everything from both hospitals, and so they had 2 different sets of records from 2 different sets of hospitals with 2 different individuals, and they had the ability to create, some pretty good analysis probably because of that. And it was clear that, I have the photographs. We were deathly sick, and, we were losing, large amounts of skin. It looked like we had been severely burned by, like, boiling water or something like that. I mean, just huge patches of skin on our hands and our feet came off. Down to the point where we were bloody from it. And
Gross.
Then in a very short period of time, 4 or 5 days, I got completely over it. It was like it never happened to me.
Incredible.
Yeah, and that was
lucky.
part of the reason that they kept wanting blood and stuff from me because they're like, well, what did you do to yourself? I'm like, I didn't do anything. So apparently I have some kind of special resistance or something. I don't know what it is.
You scared it away.
Yeah, maybe.
If they're able to take some blood from you, is that able to be used to act as a not a placebo, but something that will take care
like
of
a vaccine.
Others that are working with it, like a vaccine? Yeah.
Well, they took a ton of blood from me. I mean, I felt like I was at a blood drive. I mean, they took.
Sounds like you were.
Seriously.
It is draining you. Oh, goodness me. Well, we're going to take a very short commercial break. And then we come back. Bruce, I want to bring you into the conversation because when you started having the conversations with John about the book, strange things happened in your skies in Canada. So we want to find out more about what happened to you because it sounds like this had pretty much of a wide reach, and it got their hands on you, too. So we want to hear about that. So everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a break, and you are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We'll be right back.
Pure essential oils, specialized minerals, and a revolutionary anti-aging technology. Astridian combines the best of all scientifically proven ingredients in easy-to-use creams, lotions, and concentrated serums. Astridian's advanced line of products take your skin to a new level of being healthy and beautiful. We offer a variety of collections that address all your skin concerns. The Essential Anti-Aging Series treats and moisturizes your skin for a long-lasting, younger look. The Multivitamin Series promotes healthy skin with high-quality vitamins and minerals. The Sports Series restores skin from cellular damage and stress. Astridian also offers a revitalizing solution for hair and a professional series for doctors and medical spas. Visit astridian.love today and begin your new journey to healthy, beautiful, youthful skin. Astridian, beyond your expectations.
There are a lot of psychics out there. How do you decide which one is right for you? You look for someone who empowers you, who's practical and spiritually connected, who says, here are your opportunities, here are your challenges, and here's a way to deal with them, and then gives you your own toolbox to make your life everything you want it to be. Hi, I'm Corby Mitleid, and that's how I work with you. As a certified professional tarot reader, I've helped thousands of people for over 40 years through my toolbox. Cards, past life retrieval, numerology, spirit guide conferences, and mediumship. Whether it's career, relationships, finances, or your spiritual road, together we can replace your confusion with clarity. And you'll probably find a little laughter along the way. Visit me at CorbyMitleid.com to find out how to cross your bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. And tell me you found me at Supernatural Girls for a special gift with your reading. Corby Mitleid, the practical psychic for catching your tomorrows today. Find me at CorbyMitleid.com. That's CorbyMitleid.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Are you frustrated with endless mantras, affirmations, and processes that promise to align your life with your dreams, only to find yourself years later in the same space where you began? Do you feel like you must be doing something wrong because nothing seems to be working? Don't you just wish that someone could shift your consciousness for you and your life could align with your desires without all the effort? Well, your wish is about to come true. Hi, I'm Carrie Cannon, and I have a gift that allows me to align the consciousness of others to be in harmony with their dreams. The best part is, it requires no particular effort on your part. Upon listening to a consciousness alignment, people have reported instant energy shifts, financial windfalls, soulmate connections, healed relationships, physical healings, and more. To gain access to a free trial offer for my entire Manifesting Miracles library of consciousness alignments, go to commandmiracles.com now for details. Again, that's commandmiracles.com for information about our free trial offer. That's commandmiracles.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman, PK, and George Lugo. And we are having quite a conversation tonight, learning so much again from our guest, John Edmonds. He is the owner of the Stardust Ranch in Arizona. He's had amazing adventures, some of them good, some of them not so good, with aliens on his ranch. And we are also joined by his co-author, Bruce Macdonald. Now, the book is called Stardust Ranch and the True Story, and you can buy it on Amazon.com. We highly recommend the book because there's more information than we can ever get to in 90 minutes on this show. So it is available, Amazon.com, Stardust Ranch, the True Story. So, Bruce, tell us what happened to you when you got involved with this situation.
Okay. There were two attempts at this book. The second one was successful, which produced Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story. Now, I was not looking for this kind of story in my life. I periodically take time off work in software and telecommunications to do a book project. I've written 3 novels and 2 nonfiction books, the second one being Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story. A mutual friend of John and mine contacted me and said, hey, you got to hear this story. This is an incredible story. You're going to want to write this, and I think you can do it. And I said, okay, I'll take a listen. And I reached out, and John and I connected in 2012, and I started to listen to, what was happening. I'm not the most paranormally literate person in the world. I'm not really in this world. I don't really follow exopolitics that much. But John's story was so captivating. I had the time. I was between work contracts. I said, I'll take a go at this. Now, what happens is, generally when you write, you create a concentration vacuum. And when I'm working on a book, I really can't do anything else. I have to be free and clear of any work obligations. The only thing I can really attend to is my personal life, my wife and my dog and my cats and things like that. But other than that, I just go completely zombie, as I think most writers do.
Yes.
And it builds up, it builds up a kind of an energy and a connection with the material. And when that happens, and when that happened with John's material, the first thing that happens to me is I usually get a very, very pronounced dream presence. And so and I mean the kind of dreams that wake you up in the middle of the night, kind of scream, don't forget this, dummy. Those kinds of dreams. And very, 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 very specific to what's going on in the book. And they seem to have an element of protection to them. It's hard to describe. The second thing that happens is the entire time I'm working on this book, there's an incredible disquiet around me. From 2003 to 2005, I worked on a true crime nonfiction book about a very unfortunate murder in Toronto. I worked on it with the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted in Canada, and their lawyer teams helped me work through the material, and I wrote a nonfiction book. Now, when I wrote that book, I would wake up in the middle of the night talking to the victim. And so the writing really gets into you, right?
Yeah.
And in the Stardust Ranch book, it was just kind of always the hair up on the back of my neck. Another thing, the first time I worked on the book, a lot of electronic problems. And I'm a computer guy. Even here on the mountain in Costa Rica, I've got 9 computers. I've got about 8 Lenovo's, the IBM ThinkPads, and I've got a big iMac. And I know my equipment the way a soldier knows his gear, and the kinds of things that happen aren't really normal. So there's a kind of an electromagnetic interference that comes about. That was really distinct the first time I worked on the book with John. And to be honest, I'm not as versed as everybody else in this conversation seems to be in this world. And so, I'm not ashamed to admit I got spooked. I got spooked, and I didn't want to finish the book. And I found that it affected the people around me too. I don't know if I was transmitting the energy somehow, but people around me would be crankier, and they're much more prone to argument and things like that. It was just like kind of like an evil totem, the whole thing, when I was working on it the first time. Now, the second time here up on the mountain, I didn't have as many equipment problems. We had a lot of communication problems on Skype, John and I. A lot of the calls got interrupted. I don't think it had anything to do with our internet connection. But the disquiet was in full force here. And because I live in such an isolated environment now, I live in a region called the Talamanca Mountains, which is a UNESCO heritage site. It's pure rainforest. It's absolutely gorgeous. I really had the sense that there was this presence around me when I was writing the book, and it was not a comfortable presence. And so I took to doing meditation sessions in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening for 30 minutes to try and maintain my, well, let's call it my inner hygiene, as the Taoists might call it. But it was reaching a point where it was really starting to bother me again, and I was about to reach out to John and say, look, and I felt so bad about this because I quit on him in 2012. This has happened to other writers who have tried to work on this book. It's very caustic material. It's almost radioactive at the psychological level. And just as I was reaching my breaking point, I woke up about 10 days into this write of the book, and there was a ball of white light at my ceiling, and my wife Rosemary was in bed with me. She described it as an angelic presence. It was like luminescent water. We snapped a couple photos of it with our cell phones. I've shown it to all my friends, and it sort of cleaned everything out, Pat, and everything. I was able to finish the book. I have no idea what happened. I'd love to hear the opinion of this panel of hosts, because it was really quite a magical experience in my life. So I experienced a little bit of the negative, and this time something positive came in to help create a space where I could finish this book.
That's very powerful, and I think your wife was right on the money when she called it an angelic presence. Sounds like it raised the whole vibration around you. What do you think, you guys, George and PK?
I think it's finally had reached its time. I think that was part of it. It wasn't quite ready yet. It's like that cake, you want to take it out of the oven, but it's just not quite done enough. And I think with that feeling that came about, it opened the door for the rest of it to take place.
Yes. Yeah,
that's what I feel too. I feel that it was just taking its time to see when they felt that you were ready for it, and then they exposed themselves to that, to you to get this done. You were ready for it. Well,
you also knew that you were the partner to work with this, to bring it out. But in the beginning, when you started, it wasn't ready yet. And when it reached the point that it was time to open the door and let it be made known to everyone else.
Yeah, you were notified.
Yep.
Yes. I feel very much there was a synchronicity to this book, and the 7.5 years between the two attempts to write it, I guess it was percolating in my unconscious. It came out with what I feel was a very strong and compelling narrative this time. The storyline came out really well. People report not being able to put the book down. And this is the entirety of this story. The 23 years that John and Joyce lived at that ranch is a very difficult narrative to circumscribe from a writer's perspective, to lasso a narrative around everything that's going on at that ranch, from the positive to where the negative to where it gets more positive around 2011, and it's a lot to get your head around. And this time I was able to do it, but this environment I live in is so clean and pure. I was really able to concentrate and get into it, and I'm really proud that I wrote this book, and finally fulfilled my obligation to John and I think to something that wanted me to write this book.
Agree.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are so
How does
many...
your son feel about it?
Well, yeah, he thinks it's pretty cool. He was really into UFOs when he was from about 8 till 14. He went through a huge UFO phase. He was one of the first readers of an early draft we gave out to him, and he enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, he loves, he had seen the Ghost Adventures series on Stardust Ranch, and he said, Dad,
Right.
You're doing a book on that place? I said, yeah. And the first thing he said was, can we go? And based on what, now, people say, Bruce, why don't you want to go? You wrote this book, and the reason is what I just described, that disquiet I felt writing the book. Something didn't want the book written, and something did want the book written, and both things were immaterial and non-physical to my senses or mind, anyways. But I could feel them both.
Yeah.
Wow.
I use the phrase that timing is everything, and I think that feeling that you get when it's the right time, how doors open and things just start to flow.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is quite a challenging story to write, as you mentioned, because there's so much going on, and a lot of it is quite shocking. I mean, when you were writing about John, when you lost your favorite horse to the violence of the ETs, and when you confronted them with your samurai sword, finally cut off one of their heads. I mean, this is a very scary and violent story, which, again, it is very difficult to wrap your mind around. How do you take on an alien? And
movie, right? So you get
right.
into it.
I mean, it's very challenging story that way, and also, I mean, hard to write it, hard to live it. I mean, John, what you've been through, you and Joyce, it's just an incredible challenge.
Well, something that to mention, and that is, Bruce took on the situation with the doppelgangers, and that is probably for me at least, that is probably one of the really scary things in the story, and that is that, there were several times that I thought I was with my wife, and I wasn't. I was with something that looked just like her, spoke like her. There was no distinguishing difference until I was sitting in a restaurant looking across the dinner table at her, and that's when I started to realize it wasn't my wife. And then not too long after that, the phone rang, and it was my wife calling me from the ranch, asking me why in the hell I'd just driven off the ranch and left her there.
Oh, my God.
Scary.
Now, tell us the whole backstory of this. So what were you doing? You were at home. You thought it was your wife you were taking to dinner. She actually, just whatever it was, gets in the truck with you and off you go? I mean, what happened?
Well, yeah, that's the gist of it. But this actually started on our honeymoon. We were in Hawaii for a month on our honeymoon, and we visited all the different islands because we were going to move. Instead of moving to the ranch, we were going to move, we actually moved to the ranch and then thought, you know what, when all this stuff started, we would turn around and get off the ranch and go to Hawaii. And we ended up going to Hawaii. And while we were in Hawaii, we had several experiences where we thought we were with each other, and it turned out we were with these like body doubles that were almost indistinguishable. And the only way we actually figured out that we weren't together was we would, she would disappear and go someplace and do something and then come back. And I'd say, where have you been? And she'd be like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I don't understand. I mean, you were here, but now you're gone, and now you're back? Where have you been? And we kept having these experiences like this. And that's when we started putting it together that we were having some kind of, there were like identical I don't know what you want to say, clones
almost like
of
a
us.
doppelganger or a shapeshifter,
Yeah.
one or the other.
Exactly.
And so, but here's my question. Okay, so you're at the restaurant, you're sitting across from something you think is your wife. She calls you and reams you out because you left her at the ranch. What happens to whatever is sitting across from you?
It got up and went in the bathroom.
And then?
It literally, and then I, at first, you see, part of the thing is this. My wife has extremely blue eyes. And when this thing was sitting across the table from me, gradually, as I was starting to have the realization that this wasn't my wife, her eyes started getting darker and darker and darker to the point where they almost got to be a dark gray. And then it excused itself, got up and went to the washroom. And I was sitting there at the table saying to myself, what the heck? And then the phone rings, and I answer the phone. And my wife is like yelling at me, going, why did you leave me? And I'm like, I didn't leave you. You're right here. You're in the bathroom right now. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm at home. I'm talking to you on the phone. And I'm like, oh, my God. You know? So it was horrifying, just horrifying.
And so when
Did it come
this
back?
thing went to the bathroom, they didn't come back?
It never came back. I sent the waitress into the bathroom to look for her, and she says there's nobody there.
Whoa.
Wow.
Now, what do you think this was? Do you think it was a shapeshifter?
I don't know. I mean, there's no insight here. But it's not the only time it's happened, and it's happened with me, where Joyce and I were in San Diego, and I went into a store. Apparently, came back with a something that I bought, and it wasn't me. I came from around the corner, and I saw her talking to somebody. And I went to walk up and see what was going on. And she looked at me and she goes, where have you been? And I said, well, I was over here looking at a boat. And she's like, no, you were just here. You just bought that set of wind chimes. And here's the wind chimes. And I'm like, no, I was over here looking at a boat. And it turned out, again, this was another one of these examples where it makes no sense at all. It doesn't have to happen on the ranch. It can happen, 4,000 miles away in Hawaii, or 300 miles away in San Diego.
That is very strange. And
I
there
know.
aren't a lot of options
everything
as to
with
what
this
this could
story
be.
is strange.
Yeah, but it's strange that it happens off-site, and could be a time-space issue or a doppelganger, but it doesn't sound like a doppelganger. It sounds like a shapeshifter, because it's almost like whatever this is, like let's go back to the restaurant. You're sitting across from this thing, and it looks a lot like your wife, but the eye color is changing. It's almost like she knows she's about to be exposed, and so she goes to the bathroom and doesn't come back. So to me, that just sounds like something other than a doppelganger. Doppelganger is your twin. So it doesn't sound like that. It does sound like a shapeshifter. What do you think, you guys? George, PK? What does it sound like to you?
What do you think, George?
Oh, okay. I just feel like, it could even be alien, just another way of doing it, just a shape-shifting. Did you have sex with this person that was sitting across from you earlier that day? Maybe they're trying to get samples. I don't know, but that's very unusual for that to happen.
Well,
so
that's the part that was so horrible about our honeymoon, was that I was with her thinking it was my wife.
Right.
Ooh.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, wow.
Was anything different about that? Did it seem artificial or strange or?
No, nothing. I didn't notice any difference. I didn't even, if she hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. But like the last day and a half of our honeymoon, Joyce spent most of her time crying because she was so upset. And of course, I felt like a total ass, but I had no way of, I told her, I said, how was I supposed to know? It looked just like you, it was dressed just like you. It was, how was I supposed to know? And she goes, well, you should have known. And I'm like, well,
you couldn't have been as good as me. She should have known that
well,
part.
you know, I'm your wife. You should have known better. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hard coming back from that one, John.
I know.
Oh, boy.
Trust me, I still remember it 23 years later.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
You're lucky she still kept you.
Now, let's talk a little bit
see,
about...
You know, that's...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well,
No,
I was just going to say, you know, part of our relationship has been the fact that, you know, the reason we have so much trust is because, you know, we've been through this. And, I mean, you know, this is above and beyond, you know, for health and sickness and stay together no matter what. This has been epic. It's just the entire time we've been together, this thing has just been epic.
Now, usually when it comes to alien contact, it's intergenerational. Do either one of you know if generations in the past in your family history have had any contact?
Well, not in my wife's case, but the thing that's interesting in that is I'm half Native American, I'm half Cherokee, and there's a lot of things on my mother's side of the family that are hard to explain, but you know, her mother was adopted, she was an orphan, and so we really don't know anything about my grandmother. And she doesn't remember or didn't remember anything before she passed about her earlier years. But so part of the family we had no way of being able to trace, but on my grandfather's side, on my mother's side, you know, he was 100% Cherokee Indian, and he was able to tell me a lot of things way back in the early 70s that to me at the time didn't make any sense, and I really didn't put much into it. But later on I started saying to myself, you know what, that might explain a few things. And so I can trace maybe a little bit back that way.
Well, that's very interesting. Go ahead.
No abductions in my family. My brother and I saw a craft when I was about 9 and he was 10. You know, and that's, I think, about the only time I've seen a craft. I've seen a lot of orbs. I had something going on the mountain here where there were orbs over my house for a while. The neighbors were taking pictures of them. Or not orbs, but a little bit higher up in the sky. But no abduction. Nobody's ever spoken about it. You know, my grandmothers, my grandfathers, nobody's ever spoken about it at all. So, I think I have a little native blood being Canadian, and then I'm pretty much ethnically Scottish. But yeah, not that I know of. But a lot of people who've been abducted don't know.
That's right. So you did have an experience of seeing a ship, you and your brother. So that's telling right there that something went on, and you had some connection with it, even if it was a peripheral experience. You still had an experience. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, you know, and it came up about 10 years ago. I'm 53 now, and my brother's 1 year older than me, 54. It came up about a decade ago at Christmas dinner, and, you know, my mother said, remember when you boys used to talk that crazy story about seeing the saucer? And my brother's about the most rational guy you're ever going to meet in your life. He's a chartered financial analyst. He works in a financial institution in Canada. And he was very, very offended. And he said, look, I saw it. We saw it. Ask Bruce. And I said, yeah, we did see it. There's no doubt about it. We both remember it. And it's an interesting thing to remember so many years because we were so young. I remember it so clearly in my mind. My family had a Volkswagen Beetle back then. So I was born in 66. This would have been about the time of the Montreal Olympics. And my brother and I didn't have our seatbelt on. They didn't have the seatbelt laws back then. And we were on our knees looking out the back window of the Volkswagen. And we saw the craft. And it wasn't just like a millisecond. We were still on the side roads. We were leaving the family cottage outside of Ottawa, Ontario, the nation's capital. And we saw it. we looked at each other, we looked back at it, we looked at each other, and we didn't speak about it for about till we were later on in our teens, and that's when we started to talk about tell our parents and stuff, and they just sort of laughed. But I think, my mom read this book, and it brought up that memory again. She said, "Remember when you and your brother Ross said you saw the saucer?" I said, "Mom, would you stop saying we said we saw a saucer? We saw a saucer."
Right.
Two people can't have a hallucination. So.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but no abductions that I know of. No abductions.
Wow. Well, that's a very interesting story. That in and of itself is telling. It really is. So let's talk a little bit about another chapter in this wonderful book, Stardust Ranch. When you used a samurai sword. Tell us about that.
Well, I had started out using a baseball bat, an aluminum baseball bat, because I live in a brick house, and this is a one-off house. I mean, it was, a home-built house by a guy who knew how to build houses. And the brick walls on the inside of the house are exposed. So the same brick that's outside is the same brick that's inside. And this house is huge, and it's very sturdy. But you can't use a gun or any kind of weapon in it that you have to worry about something bouncing off a wall or bouncing off a cement floor, something like that, because you could easily be injured. And so, the easiest thing for me was I had a little aluminum baseball bat that I got at a baseball game, a Major League Baseball game on Bat Day. And that worked pretty well, but it didn't have the ability to kill. And I really wanted to kill one of these things so that I could have proof. And, I figured it was fair game. I tried every which way I could to try to, come to some kind of peace with them. They didn't communicate. They never have. They just showed up, did bad things, hurt us, hurt my animals, killed my animals. And so I thought, okay, there's no holds barred here. I can do anything that I have to defend my wife and myself and my animals. The next thing that happened was that at Christmas time one year, we were out driving, and I saw a guy go around a corner real fast, and there was a Christmas tree on top of his vehicle, and the Christmas tree fell off, and then a few seconds later, a sword fell out of the back of his truck. And I tried to honk the horn and flash the lights to signal him that this had happened, but he didn't stop. So I pulled over, I picked up the Christmas tree, stuck it in my truck, and I picked up the sword and took it home with me. And that's how I got the sword.
Wow. Well, so here was your weapon that actually worked. And tell us about the night that you used it.
Well, it was about 6 p.m., and Joyce hadn't come home quite yet from work. And we have a kitchen and a living room and a set of glass doors that go between the kitchen and this Arizona room, which is about 1,000 square foot room on the back of the house. And it's got windows on one side with a door that goes out to the pool, and then there's another door that goes out to the backyard, and there's a door that goes out to the carport. So there's 4 sets of doors in this one room. And as I walked from the kitchen into the sun porch area, all of a sudden one of these grays showed up, and then a half a second later 2 more showed up. And I thought to myself, man, this is it. And I reached back into the house. I walked back into the house, grabbed the sword that was in a scabbard, pulled the sword out, and I literally went out onto the sun porch and confronted this thing. And it didn't go away. It didn't scare away. I yelled at it. Nothing happened. So I ran it through. And literally ran the sword right through the thing and right into the wall behind it. And pulled out the sword, took another swipe at it, and took the head. And
did it make any sound when you did that? Because it probably wasn't expecting that.
No,
sound.
I'm sure it wasn't expecting it. It made a hissing sound. It just went. I mean, it was very almost like snake-like.
Wow.
And I could hear the air come out of it. I could see the big black eyes, and the eyes were like a fly's eyes. They were like multi-chambered, multi-pigmented, very strange. And I had a dead alien, and I was like, well, now what do I do with it? And so I got on the phone, and I called a couple of people that I knew, and I said, if you were ever in a situation where you just happened to have like a dead gray, what would you do with it?
By the way.
Yeah. And the guy was like, this gentleman that I called, he says, so are you telling me you killed an alien? And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, sort of. What do you do in a situation like that? And he said, well, wrap it up in plastic and put it in a freezer, or wrap it up in linen or cotton, and you have a big freezer. Well, it turned out I had a deep freeze. And so that's what I did. I took it and I put it in the deep freeze. And he said, I'm going to make a couple of phone calls for you, and I'll get back to you. Well, the next day he called me back, and he says, I've got a guy who is a scientist that works in cattle mutilations, and he's been doing it for a long time. He's well known. He's bona fide, and he'll know what to tell you. And I said, well, please have him call me. So about 2 hours went by, and Dr. Levengood called me, and I explained to him what happened, and he was very excited. And he said, so you actually have the body? And I said, yes, I have the body. It's absolutely dead. And he said, have you done anything to it? And I said, the only thing I did was I did what I was told, which was to go ahead and wrap it up and put it in the freezer. And he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. And he gave me very specific instructions on how to dissect it and prepare samples. And then he said, I want you to wrap those samples up, and I want you to FedEx them to me. And that's what I did. I FedExed him an alien.
But at the same time, we ended up with no proof because something else happened, right? Did somebody steal it, or somebody? What happened? Because there was never really anything that came out of that.
Well, there was. I mean, it was. He sent out samples to a few different universities that were, I guess, legitimate major universities. They went ahead and gave reports on the evidence. And those are actually, we actually have that information. I mean, it's up on the website, our old website, as Bruce likes to say. Not really supposed to use that one anymore. And so we're I mean, the information's out there. Basically what it said was, from these slides that came back that were prepared, was that we had something that could not be identified as anything human, anything animal, or anything plant. And actually the samples were both plant-like and animal-like in the fact that they contain hemoglobin that also had plant material in it. And nothing like that exists.
What was the color of their blood? I mean, when you killed this thing, did you see blood?
Well, it looked
what we would call blood?
Fluid. Yeah, it looked like
brake
fluid.
fluid. Oh my God!
Or brake fluid. Yeah, except that it was very, very acidic. I mean, if you touched it, it would burn you, and it wouldn't just burn you a little bit. It would burn you to the point where it would burn the, burn the skin on your fingers.
So
I was very careful.
It fell. Did it eat the area of which it fell on?
No, it literally sprayed out of this thing just like it was almost under pressure. And wow. it was on a Italian quarry floor, which I have throughout my house, and it burned the floor a little bit, burned the finish on the floor, and it sprayed on the glass doors and on the wood on the trim. And so we ended up preparing, slides and things from that, and that all went to Dr. Levengood. I mean, the whole carcass, everything went to Dr. Levengood. I didn't hold on to anything. But over the years...
And where is it now? Does Dr. Levengood still have it?
And Dr. Levengood's dead.
That's what I thought. So who has it?
And his wife's dead. Well, the lab assistant that worked in the lab with him apparently packed up the entire lab, and it's somewhere in California. and we have not been able to retrieve any of the material. So right now it's still kind of just out there. But
well, that's too bad, because you're the first one to have that, as a civilian, to have that kind of proof.
Well, we had other proof as well, and it went to other people. So that's not the only material that's out there. I mean, there was a fair amount of material that was spread around.
So when you sent these bits and pieces out, what happened to the rest of it?
Well, it all went to him. I mean, he literally had me. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was, it was more than one package.
Hmm.
We prepared it and sent it in various different stages.
Containers. Yeah.
Wow. But the interesting thing is the universities that received the material apparently took material from that material and sent it to other universities. Because to my experience, Dr. Levengood had told me that he'd only sent them to places that were kind of around him, and he was in Grass Lakes, Michigan, and so the universities were fairly, in that state or around the Midwest. And I started getting calls from universities that were Ivy League universities and universities that were on the West Coast, big names. And next thing I know, they're requesting to come and collect their own samples. And we ended up allowing a few different teams to come in and forensically examine the house for material. So more material went out of here.
Mm. So now that you've had your conversation with the plasma entity, the rainbow alien, you said things have calmed down a lot. So you haven't seen any grays in a while?
We still see them, but we see them as if they're in a big hurry to get somewhere else. They don't. They literally, they used to just come and kind of show up in masses. I mean, we had visitors here that came and stayed on the ranch, and Joyce and I had gone out to dinner. And we were going to bring food home for this person. She wasn't feeling well. And while we were gone, the living room, apparently like 12 of them showed up while she was here by herself. She took photographs of it and the whole works. I mean, we had, another whole set of proof. So that person was an individual that was obviously a witness. We've had lots of people come over the years and see things and have experiences. We had a gal that was here in last January, and she got very belligerent with the Greys, and the next thing that happened was she had a great big scratch on her arm that bled.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up taking one of my cats for like 6 weeks.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And the cat reappeared in my truck, in a locked truck that nobody else has keys to except me.
Oh,
fortunately I got him back because he's a great cat. But, the cat was literally, he was here 1 minute and right in front of both of us, and the next minute he just disappeared and finished.
We're almost at the top of the hour. I just want to add quickly, Ghost Adventures went out there, and I think it's the only extraterrestrial story they ever did. But they actually captured that hissing sound in the show. So if you want to hear what those great...
again, isn't it, Bruce? That's coming on again?
I think it's on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel too, and they put up all their episodes. But yeah, you can actually
next Thursday night.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I saw something that it's going to be aired again next week. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. John, if you find out when, or Bruce, whoever finds out when it's going to be aired again, let me know and we'll post it for our audience so that they can watch it. Thursday night.
Next Thursday night.
Next Thursday. We will post that for everybody. And thank you so much, John and Bruce, for coming on our show again and sharing this experience. Everybody, get the book, Stardust Ranch.
It's
the incredible
wonderful.
True story. Yes.
And it's on Lulu
Amazon.
as well as Amazon. It's on Lulu as well in hard copy and I am signing copies if people request it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to be back next week. We're going further down the rabbit hole. We're staying on this subject. Be sure to join us. Until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.